I want to talk about something that's not usually recognized as a theory of translation. It's a set of ideas that have come from the industry, from an industry that's called the localization industry. But it deals with cross-cultural communication in some of the areas that are the most important and lucrative of our globalizing age. And they concern translation. I think they should be dealt with in terms of translation theory, and I suspect that they are in themselves theories of translation, although this is not commonly realized. Localization is used as a term usually with respect to computer software. For example, here is a menu that I have on my computer, and you will see that some of the items have been put into Spanish and others are still in English. Why is this so? Because some parts of this piece of software have been localized and others haven't. We would say, but then localization just means translation. Some parts have been translated and others haven't. And often people say that, localization is just a fancy word for translation, and translation theorists don't have to pay any real attention. I think that's not entirely true. I think personally there are some new things in localization and we should look at them. What is localization? Here's a standard definition. Localization, taking a product, notice it says product, it's not talking about texts, and tailoring it. Tailors make clothes, they cut things to make it fit. Tailoring it to an individual local market. And that local market is called a locale. And that's a very useful term because it's very short. A locale is a set of linguistic, cultural, and often economic factors. Get those factors together, and that's what you're working for. It's great because if you think about it, translations are never produced for entire languages or for entire target cultures. Translators have always been working on products, have always been working for locales, for specific readerships or specific users. We've never had a term for that. Here it is, locale. Within localization, translation is usually seen as this. Converting user-visible natural language strings from one language to another. That is, translating the bits of language, Spanish, English, French, natural language, that we can see on the screen. Translation is not doing the work on the codes that are within the software. So, localization would equal translation plus other things, factor X. And factor X and the relation between translation and factor X would be what is new. Factor X. The key change is this, I think. It's what's called internationalization. It's a bad term, but that's what the industry uses. Internationalization means instead of going from a piece of software developed for the home market, perhaps the American market, in English, in American English, and then translating one by one from that into many other locales, we're first going to prepare this product by stripping out all the culture-specific features. We're not going to talk about American dollars, for example, and making it as generic as possible. We're going to talk about currency units in this product and get this generic product that is then localized into many locales in a simultaneous way. Internationalization means taking the product you have and preparing it for localization. The best example of internationalization is the character encoding. The fact that now characters are not limited to the 26 that are there for English, but are encoded in very, very complex codes, so that all languages, we believe, can have all accents and all different symbols, we believe, and there is general interchangeability. Here, what has happened is that instead of trying to work from English into all the languages of the world, the solution has been to develop this big, complex code, which is internationalized. Localization then includes features such as adapting those bits that are specific to a culture, and these would have to be internationalized in some way, specifically dates, time, currency, conventions within a piece of software, for example. The product will then be re-engineered. Often this involves changes such as, for example, hotkeys. You know, I work with Microsoft Word in English. I go Control O, open. In Spanish, I have to go Control A, abrir. But you have to be sure that the A, if it's going to be there for abrir, isn't there for some other function as well. So a lot of work has to go into redesigning the product for the new locale on this level, which involves a certain amount of re-engineering. And then, because it gets very complex, you have to test it. There's product testing. You can see here that localization as a project will involve a certain amount of translation, but also terminology work, also expertise on marketing, on local cultural conventions, linguistic advice has to be given. There are the software engineers who have to be involved, and because it's become so complex, there is a significant degree of project management. The key person is the project manager, who has to coordinate the work done by all these people and make sure that it comes in time and on budget. Often the most lucrative aspects of a localization project are in those last mentioned areas and not in translation. The basic message then is, don't think like this. Don't think of the relationship between one source text and one target text. Think like this, of a relationship that goes from a source text somewhere to an internationalized product, and then from that internationalized product into many localized products at once. Okay? That's what's new, I think. It's the idea of one to many. The fact that translation is now in a situation where we're going from an internationalized version, from one specially prepared internationalized version, into many target cultures. Is this new? Well, as a term and as a theory, significantly new, yes. However, you can look around and find things like this happening. Bible translators, for example, don't work usually these days on the source texts, on the Hebrew, Aramaic things. They work on extensive sets of linguistic and cultural notes, on exegeses. They work on a very complex and electronically held internationalized version of the Bible, with lots of the information already in English, etc.